My parents called me a dropout. Look at your sister. I secretly built an $83 million tech firm while she wore a $20,000 gown. They are begging now. The words from the text message echoed in my mind as I stared at the screen, reading them over and over. It had taken me a long time to reach this moment, but it still felt surreal, almost like a joke I couldn't quite get. I closed my eyes and leaned back in my chair, letting the silence of my small apartment settle around me. The quiet was deafening, almost like a constant reminder of everything I had tried to escape. I wasn't supposed to be here. I wasn't supposed to be this, the dropout. The one who didn't finish college, who was labeled as a failure by my own family. And yet here I was, staring at the message that seemed to finally make everything clear. My family. They had never understood me. To them, I was always the one who didn't measure up. My sister, Sophia, had always been the perfect child. The one who got the good grades, who went to a prestigious university, who climbed the corporate ladder without a second thought. She was the one who had the life everyone envied, the one who wore designer gowns to galas and worked for a top-tier pharmaceutical firm. And then there was me, the one who had always been different, the one who didn't fit their mold. I had dropped out of college, not because I wasn't capable, but because I'd found something else to pour my energy into, something I knew was bigger than any degree. But they never saw it that way. To them, I was just the disappointment, the one who never amounted to anything. I still remembered the day I left college. It was a sunny afternoon, and I could feel the weight of my parents' expectations crushing me with every step I took toward the door. They didn't understand. They still don't. All they cared about was the status that came with their daughter being an MBA graduate with a high-paying job. They didn't understand why I had to leave, why I had to follow my gut, even though it meant abandoning their dream for me. That was 4 years ago. In the time since, I had built Client Flow, a company that revolutionized CRM software for small businesses. It started as a small project I worked on at night, teaching myself how to code, figuring things out on my own. I never told my family. I kept it all hidden, believing that if I succeeded, they'd finally see me as more than a failure. I remember the first check I received, 50 clients, bringing in $7,500 a month. It didn't seem like much at the time, but it was something I had built on my own. From there it grew. By the time I hit 2,000 clients, I was making $600,000 a month. And as the months went by, my company expanded faster than I had ever imagined. But none of that mattered to my parents. They still didn't care. My mom would barely ask about my business, only nodding when I mentioned it, and changing the subject whenever I tried to explain how things were going. Meanwhile, Sophia would talk about her job, her latest award, her fiancé Nathaniel, who came from a wealthy family. They were the picture-perfect couple, the kind of people my parents were proud of. Sophia's wedding was the final straw. The one event where I realized, no matter how much I accomplished, I would always be the outsider. She invited everyone, except 3 weeks before the wedding, I received the text. "We need to discuss the wedding, Rachel. Nathaniel's parents have been inquiring about our family and are quite image-conscious. I believe it would be better if you didn't go. You would feel more at ease anyway." I stared at the words for a long time. It wasn't just the words themselves, but the way they were phrased. Carefully, as if to make it sound like it was my choice. But it wasn't. I had been uninvited. My sister had decided I didn't fit her perfect image for her perfect wedding. It was the same old story. I was the one who didn't belong. The one who was never good enough. I thought back to the family dinners where they would discuss Sophia's accomplishments, her recent awards, her latest promotion, and every time my achievements were brushed aside. "That's nice, Rachel," my mom would say when I mentioned a new client or a milestone. "Tell everyone about Sophia's latest project." And yet, here I was, staring at the very words that confirmed what I had known all along. I was nothing more than the dropout in their eyes. "Understood," I texted back, my fingers numb as I hit send. It was the only thing I could say, the only thing that made sense. My phone rang immediately. "Rachel, please don't be dramatic about this." Sophia's voice came through, but it sounded distant, detached, as if she already knew the answer. "I'm not being dramatic. You asked me not to come. I'm not coming." The line went silent. It wasn't that I was angry. At least not in the way people usually get angry. I was numb. Numb to the years of rejection. Numb to the way my family had treated me. They had never taken the time to understand me, and they weren't about to start now. Sophia's wedding would go on without me. The life I had built, the success I had achieved, would mean nothing to them. But I wasn't about to let them define me. Not anymore. This was my moment. The weeks that followed Sophia's wedding day were a blur. I couldn't get the image of her text message out of my mind. "I believe it would be better if you didn't go. You would feel more at ease anyway." Those words felt like a weight I couldn't shake off. They were the final confirmation of something I had known for a long time: my family would never truly see me. But instead of succumbing to the disappointment, I threw myself deeper into my work. Client flow became my everything. I had always known I was capable of more than what my family saw in me, but now I had proof. I wasn't going to let them define me. I couldn't afford to. I had worked too hard to build something real, something that mattered. I spent long nights at my desk, learning everything I could about the tech world, coding the platform, tweaking the user interface until it felt right. Client flow was built from the ground up by me, from the late night brainstorming sessions to the countless hours spent in front of the screen, watching the business grow. It was mine. As the company grew, I began to secure clients. Small businesses that couldn't afford enterprise-level CRM software started signing up. My system was simple, affordable, and efficient. The best part, it worked. Every time I received an email notifying me of a new subscription, I felt a surge of pride. I was doing it. I was proving everyone wrong. By the time I hit 50 clients, I was making $7,500 a month. That was just the beginning. I put all that money back into the business, hiring a few employees, upgrading the software, and improving the customer support system. I wasn't making much for myself, but I didn't care. The money would come eventually. For now, I needed to focus on scaling the business. I remember the first time I realized that client flow could be something big. It was a random Tuesday in the middle of a chaotic week. My phone buzzed with a notification: new subscriber. The name wasn't familiar, but what caught my eye was the size of the company. It was a medium-sized enterprise, someone who could afford the expensive CRM options from other tech giants. Yet they chose mine. I had built something valuable, something people needed. But even as the business began to grow, I stayed in the shadows. I didn't tell my family, couldn't. How could I? They still saw me as the dropout, the one who didn't finish college, the one who couldn't hold down a real job. No matter how much I achieved, I couldn't shake off the feeling that it would never be enough for them. I had to keep proving myself. I kept my apartment in Deep Ellum, the same small one-bedroom that I had moved into when I left college. It wasn't much, but it was mine. It was the one place where I felt a sense of peace, away from the judgment of my parents, away from their expectations. I didn't need their approval to succeed. But there was still a part of me that wanted it, a part of me that wanted to show them that I wasn't the failure they thought I was. Even when my business started making hundreds of thousands of dollars a month, I didn't tell them. I couldn't. They'd no idea. Every time my mom asked about my job, I would say I worked in customer service. Technically, it wasn't a lie. I did interact with clients. But it was far from the truth. I wasn't just serving customers, I was building something that was changing the landscape for small businesses. By the time I reached 3,000 clients, I was making $600,000 a month. Still, no one knew. I wasn't ready to tell them. I wasn't ready for the inevitable questions, the skeptical looks. They would never understand. They would never see me as anything other than the one who couldn't finish college. At night, I would sit alone in my apartment, reflecting on how far I had come. There were times when I felt lonely, when I wished I could share my success with someone, anyone. But I knew it was better this way. I didn't need them. I didn't need anyone to tell me I was doing a good job. I just needed to keep going, to keep building, and eventually, they would see. I remember the moment when I crossed the 5,000 client mark. The emails, the contracts, the subscriptions, it was all happening so fast. I didn't have time to sit back and enjoy it. There were always new challenges to overcome, new problems to solve. But there was also something else, a feeling of freedom, of knowing that I had built this from nothing. I wasn't relying on anyone. I had done this on my own. Still, the silence from my family lingered. My mom would send the occasional text asking how things were going, but I knew she wasn't really interested. It was just small talk. She didn't ask about the business. She never asked what I was working on. All she cared about was how much money I was making, how successful I was in her eyes, and I wasn't interested in playing that game anymore. As the business grew, I began to attract more attention. Investors, potential partners, and even competitors started taking notice. It was thrilling, but it also made me feel more exposed. I wasn't ready for the world to see me yet, not like this. I still wasn't ready to face the fact that my success would never be enough for my family. But I kept moving forward, one step at a time. With every new client, every new milestone, I was proving to myself that I didn't need their approval. I was more than their expectations. I was more than the dropout. I was building something real. And that was enough. The weeks following the wedding felt like an emotional storm I couldn't escape from. My phone buzzed nonstop. Text messages, emails, notifications, they were all reminders of the world moving on without me. It wasn't just Sophia's wedding that had caused the ripple. It was everything that had led to it. The distance, the dismissal, the rejection. Every time I picked up my phone, I felt it, like an invisible weight pressing on me. I had known for a long time that my family didn't see me as the person I had become. I was the dropout, the one who didn't fit into their perfect picture of success. But something about Sophia's wedding, the unspoken exclusion, made it hit harder than ever. For weeks, I threw myself into my work even more, immersing myself in the growth of client flow. But the bitterness lingered, the frustration, the desire to prove something not just to my family, but to myself. It wasn't long before things started picking up. Client flow was growing faster than I had ever expected. I had built something that was solving a real problem for small businesses. My client base was expanding rapidly. By the time I reached 8,000 clients, I was making more money than I had ever dreamed of, yet I still hadn't shared it with anyone. And then it happened. The message from my mom. Rachel, we need to talk. We've been hearing a lot about you lately. Your success is impressive. We'd love to understand what you've been doing. Your father wants to know more. The words stung. It was as if they were only interested because they could see something tangible now. Success, at last. But it didn't change the fact that they had never cared to understand what I was doing or why I had left school. They hadn't asked when I was struggling, when I had been working late nights trying to make my dream a reality. But now, when the money was real, when the business was thriving, they were interested. I sat there for a long time staring at the message. I wasn't sure how to respond. Part of me wanted to ignore it, to keep my distance. But another part of me, an older, more wary part, knew that this was the moment I had been waiting for. This was my chance to finally show them who I had become, to show them that I wasn't just the dropout anymore. The next day I called my mom. Hi, Mom? I said, my voice steady but carrying a weight I couldn't shake off. Rachel, it's been so long. She said, we've been hearing so many things. Your father's been telling everyone about your company. We're so proud of you. We had no idea you were doing so well. I could feel the hesitation in her voice, the gap between the words and the meaning behind them. There was still a part of her that couldn't fully embrace me. I'm doing fine, I said, keeping my tone neutral. But I don't need you to be proud of me because of my success. I need you to be proud of me for who I am. There was a long pause on the other end of the line. I know, she said, her voice softer now. We've just never understood what you were doing. All these years, we didn't know what you were working on. I didn't know how to be proud of you. But now I see it. I see what you've built. I didn't know how to respond. It wasn't enough. It wasn't the apology I needed. It wasn't the understanding I had longed for. You didn't need to understand, I said, my voice tight. I didn't need you to see what I was doing. I just needed you to trust me. But you didn't. And now, after all this time, it feels like you're only interested because I'm successful. There was another long pause. I'm sorry, she finally said, and for the first time, I could hear the sincerity in her voice. I wish I had been there for you when you needed me most. But I wasn't sure it was enough. I can't change what happened, Mom. But I'm not going to keep hiding anymore. I've built something on my own, and I don't need you to approve of it. I need you to accept me for who I am. Another silence stretched between us. I felt the weight of it, the gap that still existed between us even now. I understand, she said softly. But we still want to understand, Rachel. We want to be a part of your life. I thought for a moment, then finally spoke. I need space, Mom. I need time to figure out what this all means. I can't just pretend things are okay. It's going to take time. I know, she said. Take all the time you need. I just want you to know that we love you, and we want to make things right. As I ended the call, I felt both relieved and exhausted. I wasn't sure if this was the start of something new or just another empty promise, but I knew one thing for sure: I wasn't going to let them define me anymore. I had built something real, something I was proud of, and that was enough. The next few days passed in a blur of business calls, meetings, and product launches. My team and I were pushing hard to scale the company even further. But in the back of my mind, the conversation with my mom lingered. I wasn't sure what the future held for my family, but I was determined to focus on my future, my business, my success, and most importantly, myself. I had built this life on my own. And no matter what happened next, I wasn't going to let anyone take that away from me. The first few months after that call with my mom were a whirlwind. I didn't have time to think about anything but the growth of client flow. It was the only thing that felt like it mattered anymore. The constant stream of new clients, the feedback, the new partnerships. I threw myself into it, working even longer hours than before. I didn't want to think about my family. I didn't want to feel the weight of their absence, their dismissive comments, and their expectations. But no matter how much I tried to focus on the business, my mind kept drifting back to them. The text from my mom, the guilt in her voice, the way she had apologized, though I wasn't sure it was enough. I wasn't ready to forgive them. Not yet. But I wasn't ready to let go of the possibility of something changing either. It was complicated, like everything with him. In the meantime, my company kept expanding. At first, I was just trying to keep up with demand, but soon, the growth felt like a real, solid foundation under my feet. We were making hundreds of thousands of dollars a month. I had a team now, real, talented people who believed in what we were building. People who were excited to be part of something that mattered. I had hired a CFO, a guy named James who had worked at Oracle, and he had been crucial in helping us scale. We also brought in a head of sales, a guy named Lucas, who had a track record of building successful companies. I trusted them. They were as invested in the company as I was, and they didn't need me to explain myself or prove my worth. They saw what I had created, and they respected it. They respected me. But the one thing that still gnawed at me, even as the company grew, was the nagging feeling that my family still didn't get it. They still didn't understand what I had built. I hadn't told them much, not since that call with my mom. Not because I didn't want to, but because it didn't feel right. That's when the email came in. It was from a venture capitalist, someone I had met at a business conference in Austin. His name was Ethan Harris, and he was interested in investing in client flow. I had heard his name before. He was well known in the tech world, a real player, and his firm had the connections to take us to the next level. I was excited, but I knew this was a big decision. James was ecstatic. He had already crunched the numbers and knew that bringing in investors would mean more resources, more opportunities. But it also meant giving up some control. The balance between running the company on my terms and letting others in was something I had to think about. I didn't take this lightly. I had always wanted to keep client flow true to my vision, to keep it mine. But now the stakes were higher. The moment I received the email, I sat down in my office, staring at it for what felt like an eternity. It was more than just a business decision. It was about whether I was ready to let others in, to admit that I couldn't do it all on my own, and maybe, just maybe, it was about trusting someone enough to help take the company to the next level. I called Ethan later that day, and we talked for almost an hour. He was sharp, confident, and had an energy that made me believe in what we were doing even more. He understood the potential of the business. He was excited about it. And by the end of the conversation, I knew I was ready to take the next step. I was ready to bring in the investment. Over the next few weeks, things moved quickly. We finalized the deal, and suddenly, client flow was poised for even bigger growth. With the investment, we were able to scale even faster. We hired more people, expanded our marketing efforts, and refined our platform. The recognition was starting to come. We were invited to business conferences, featured in industry journals, and the buzz around us was growing. And then everything changed. The Texas Governor's Business Awards. It was an event that celebrated young innovators, entrepreneurs, and leaders in the tech industry. Only a few were selected each year, and the award was prestigious, something that could push a company like mine into the public eye. I had heard of it, but never thought I would be on that stage. It seemed out of reach. But when I received the invitation to attend, I couldn't believe it. I was being considered for the award. It wasn't just about the recognition. It was about proving to myself that everything I had done mattered. I wasn't the dropout anymore. I wasn't the one who had failed. I had built something that people were starting to notice. But even as I got caught up in the excitement of the award, something lingered in the back of my mind. My family. I knew they had heard about Client Flow's success. I had seen the occasional comment from my mom on social media, asking for updates. But I still hadn't told them what was really happening. They didn't know about the investment, the award, or how big the company had grown. The day before the ceremony, I sat in my apartment, staring at my phone. I thought about reaching out to them, telling them everything, but then I remembered the way they had treated me. The way they had dismissed me, even when I was succeeding on my own. They hadn't asked about my business. They hadn't cared. I didn't need them to validate me anymore. I had built something on my own, but the part of me that still wanted to be accepted, the part that wanted them to be proud of me, tugged at me. It wasn't just about the award. It was about proving something. It was about showing them who I was now. But I still wasn't sure if I was ready to let them in. I wasn't sure if I could forgive them. Not yet. I grabbed my phone and typed out a text to my mom, telling her I was to the award ceremony. I didn't know how to explain what was happening, how big it was, how much I had accomplished, but I wanted her to know. For once, I wanted her to see me. The text was simple. I'm going to the Texas Governor's Business Awards tomorrow night. It's a big deal. I hit send, and then I waited. My phone buzzed with a response. Wow, that's incredible, Rachel. We're so proud of you. I didn't know what to feel. Relieved. Maybe a little angry. But for the first time in a long time, I felt like I was on the right path. Maybe, just maybe, they would finally see me for who I was. The night of the Texas Governor's Business Awards arrived, and I was a mix of emotions. I had spent so long focused on building client flow that I hadn't allowed myself to fully acknowledge what this moment meant. It wasn't just another award. It was recognition, proof that what I had built alone, that I had value. But as I got ready, slipping into my custom midnight blue dress, there was still that lingering question in the back of my mind. What would my family think? I caught a glimpse of myself in the mirror as I adjusted my shoes, a pair that cost more than I had ever imagined spending on anything. They were a statement, not just about my success, but about the journey I had taken to get here. I wasn't the same person I had been when I left school. The reflection staring back at me was proof of that. But I wasn't sure if it was enough. I had built something big, but did it matter to anyone but me? The ceremony was held at the Four Seasons in Austin. The room was filled with industry leaders, investors, and entrepreneurs. The energy was palpable. Everyone was there for the same reason, to be recognized for their hard work, their innovations, their ideas that changed the game. I wasn't sure if I belonged, but tonight I would find out. As I walked into the venue, I felt a wave of unease. There were so many unfamiliar faces, people who didn't know my story, who only saw the success and not the struggle. But it didn't matter. I had earned my place here. I found my seat at the front of the room, a little nervous but more excited than anything. Ethan Harris, the venture capitalist who had been instrumental in helping me secure funding, sat next to me. He was sharp, confident, a natural in these environments. He seemed completely at ease. For a moment, I envied that confidence. "You've earned this," he said quietly as the ceremony began. "You're not just here because of your investors. You've built something that people are talking about." I nodded, but inside I wasn't sure what to believe. Everything had always felt like it could be taken away at any moment. Success like this was fragile, and I wasn't sure I was ready to face the truth of how much it had changed me. As the night progressed, the speeches were made, the awards handed out, and then it was my turn. My name was called. Rachel Taylor, founder and CEO of Client Flow. The moment I stood up, it felt like time slowed down. The eyes of the room were on me. The applause started, quiet at first, then growing louder as I made my way to the stage. It wasn't like I had imagined. It wasn't a victory lap. It wasn't validation. It was the beginning of something bigger, something I couldn't yet fully grasp. Governor Lisa Harper, who had been speaking all night, shook my hand with a firm grip. "Congratulations, Rachel. You've done something incredible," she said, handing me the crystal trophy. I didn't know what to say. The applause was deafening, and in that moment everything felt surreal. I hadn't expected to feel this way, proud, yes, but also nervous, overwhelmed. The journey had always been about proving something, not about seeking validation from others. But as I stood there, holding that trophy, I couldn't deny the truth. It mattered. It meant something. It wasn't just a trophy. It was everything I had fought for. Governor Harper's voice echoed through the microphone as she spoke. "Rachel Taylor, the founder of Client Flow, has created a company that services over 8,000 small businesses, generating over $21.5 million in revenue annually and valued at $83 million. I looked out at the crowd, and for the first time I felt seen. The screens behind me displayed graphs, pictures of Client Flow, and testimonials from satisfied clients. It was more than I could have ever hoped for, and yet, as the applause continued, I couldn't help but think about my family. Had they seen this? Had they heard? The governor turned to me. "Rachel, tell us what drove you to build Client Flow," she asked. I took the microphone, feeling the weight of the moment. My hands were slightly trembling. I cleared my throat and began to speak. "I saw a need," I said, my voice steady. Small businesses were being left behind by the big tech companies. They couldn't afford enterprise-level solutions, and the options they had were either too expensive or too complicated. I wanted to build something that could help them, something affordable, easy to use, and effective. I wanted to make technology accessible to those who needed it most. The room was silent, hanging on my words. I left college because I knew this was the right thing to do. I had to trust myself. And for a long time, I didn't know if it would work, but I believed in it. I believed in what I was building. A soft chuckle ran through the crowd when I added, "My family didn't understand. They thought I was throwing away my future." Turns out, I was building it. The room erupted into applause. It was more than just recognition. It was a moment of validation I hadn't expected. It wasn't just about the trophy. It wasn't about the money or the clients. It was about proving to myself that I could do it, no matter who believed in me or who didn't. As I spoke, I looked over at Ethan, who was smiling proudly. For the first time in a long time, I felt like I belonged. This wasn't just an award. It was the culmination of everything I had worked for. And it wasn't just mine. It was for every small business that had trusted Client Flow. It was for everyone who had believed in me. After the ceremony, the world felt different. The emails, the interviews, the social media posts, it all happened so quickly. I tried to keep up, but my phone buzzed nonstop. I was trending. Articles were being written about me. Clients were reaching out. Investor offers came in. And then I saw it, the message from my mom. I'm seeing pictures of you with the governor. Is this authentic? Call me. I stared at the screen, my heart pounding in my chest. I wasn't sure if I was ready for this conversation. The moment had come. Would they finally see me? Would they finally accept what I had done? I didn't know how to respond. So I didn't, not yet. Instead, I kept my focus on the moment, on what I had just achieved. I wasn't going to let anyone take that from me. Not ever. In the days that followed, I was overwhelmed with offers, messages, and opportunities. But even as my business grew, I couldn't forget that text. My family had seen me. They had seen what I had done. And maybe, just maybe, they would finally understand. But for now, I was focused on what mattered most, myself. I had built something real, something I could be proud of. And that was enough. The aftermath of the awards ceremony was a whirlwind. The recognition from the governor, the media coverage, the influx of new clients, it was all happening so fast. I barely had time to catch my breath before my phone started buzzing again. Text messages, social media notifications, emails from investors, tech journalists asking for interviews. I had gone from being a relative unknown to someone who was suddenly in the spotlight. It felt overwhelming, but I was also proud. The hard work was paying off. Yet, there was still a nagging thought in the back of my mind, the text from my mom. She had seen the pictures of me with the governor. She had seen the validation that had come with the award. I hadn't responded to her. I wasn't sure if I was ready, but I knew I couldn't keep avoiding it. This was the moment. The moment I had waited for so long. The day after the ceremony, my phone rang. It was my mom. "Rachel, I just saw you on TV," she said, her voice uncertain, like she didn't know how to approach this new version of me. "With the governor. Is it really true? You've built this company." I was quiet for a moment, unsure of how to respond. It felt strange to hear her speak to me like this. "Yes, it's true," I finally said. "It's been a long time coming." She was silent for a few beats, and I could hear her trying to process everything. "I had no idea," she said finally. "You never told us. All this time we thought you were just getting by." "I know," I replied, my voice tight. "I didn't tell you because you never asked. You didn't care to know what I was doing." There was a pause on the other end of the line, and I could almost feel the weight of her regret through the phone. "I didn't know how to ask," she said softly. "I didn't know what to say. I thought you were throwing everything away." I felt a sharp pang of frustration. "I wasn't throwing anything away, Mom. I was building something. But you never took the time to understand that. You never gave me a chance to show you." "I know," she said again. "I'm sorry. I've always wanted you to succeed, but I guess I didn't realize how much you were already doing. I didn't see it. And now, here you are with this incredible company. I don't know how to explain it, but I'm proud of you, Rachel. I really am." I exhaled slowly, letting the weight of her words settle in. It wasn't enough. Not yet. But it was a start. "I've worked hard for this, Mom," I said, my voice quieter now. "But I didn't need you to be proud of me for what I've built. I just needed you to be proud of me, period. For who I am. For what I've done, not just the success. But you never seemed to care about that." She was quiet for a long time. "Do care, Rachel?" "I do. I just never understood." "I know," I said, my tone softening. "But you're here now. That's what matters." The conversation ended with a tentative promise to try to understand more, to be more involved. But as I hung up, I couldn't shake the feeling that things weren't going to magically fix themselves. This wasn't some happy ending. It wasn't an apology that could erase years of silence and judgment. It was just the beginning. In the days that followed, I felt a strange mix of emotions. On one hand, I was still riding high from the award, from the recognition I had earned. But on the other hand, the weight of my family's past rejection still hung over me. I wasn't sure how to move forward with them. I wasn't sure if I even wanted to. But the business was growing, and that was my focus now. That was what mattered most. We expanded our team, brought in new talent, and started looking for ways to scale further. The investment from Ethan and his firm had opened doors I never thought possible, and suddenly we were a company on the map. People were noticing. People were paying attention. I spent hours refining our software, working with James and Lucas to streamline our sales strategy. The clients kept coming, and so did the opportunities. It was a thrilling time, but it was also exhausting. There were moments when I felt like I was losing touch with everything outside the company. But I pushed through. Then came the next wave of messages. Investors, journalists, tech CEOs all reaching out. It was what I had wanted for so long. But it also felt overwhelming. I hadn't prepared myself for this level of attention, for the pressure to keep growing, to keep succeeding. Everyone expected more, but could I handle it? Could I maintain this pace without losing myself in the process? I didn't have the answers. But I did know one thing isn't going to let anyone take this away from me. Not my family, not the pressure, not the expectations. This was mine, and I was going to see it through. In the midst of all this, I got another message. It was from Sophia. She had sent it the night after the ceremony, but I hadn't checked it until now. I hesitated for a moment, unsure of what I would read. I saw the award. It's impressive. I'm sorry for how things went between us. I didn't mean for it to be this way. I hope we can talk soon. I stared at the screen for a long time. It wasn't much. But it was something. A small olive branch. A crack in the wall she had built between us. I thought about it. About whether I was ready to let her in, to give her another chance. But for now, I wasn't sure. I wasn't ready to forgive everything, not yet. The next few days were filled with new meetings, new opportunities, and new challenges. Client flow was growing faster than I could have imagined, but with that growth came the realization that it wasn't just the business that needed attention. It was me, my emotions, my family, my past. And for the first time, I knew I had to face it. I couldn't keep running from the people who had once mattered most. But I also couldn't let them dictate my life anymore. I had come too far to let that happen. I sent a quick text to Sophia, letting her know I'd be in touch soon. But for now, I was focused on what came next. For me, for my business, and maybe, just maybe, for my family too. The weeks that followed were a strange mix of triumph and uncertainty. My business was growing at an unprecedented rate, and the recognition I had received from the awards ceremony seemed to open doors I never thought possible. The offers from investors came pouring in, and every week there were more emails from journalists asking for interviews. It was overwhelming, but also thrilling. My team and I worked around the clock to manage the growth, ensuring that we stayed ahead of the demand. But even amidst the excitement, something was missing. I kept thinking about my family. I couldn't shake the feeling that they hadn't fully grasped who I had become. Yes, they had congratulated me, but it didn't feel like enough. It wasn't just about the recognition, it was about being understood. It was about being seen for who I was, not just for my success. Sophia's message had lingered in my mind. I saw the award. It's impressive. I'm sorry for how things went between us. I didn't mean for it to be this way. I hope we can talk soon. I had read it over and over, each time wondering if I was ready to forgive her. But I wasn't sure. Could I truly move past everything? The way she had excluded me from her wedding, the way my family had always put me second to her, could I just let it go? The question hovered in my mind, unanswered, as I went about my daily routine. Then, out of the blue, I got a call from my dad. "Hey, Rachel." His voice was softer than usual, and I could tell something was different. "I've been thinking a lot about what you said. About how we didn't really see you. I think we owe you an apology." His words caught me off guard. I wasn't expecting this. Not from him. Not after everything. "I'm listening," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "I never understood what you were doing, Rachel. I was so focused on the way I did things that I didn't stop to ask you how you were doing things. I didn't understand what you were building. But now I do, and I'm proud of you. I should have said that a long time ago." There was a long pause, and I could hear the hesitation in his voice. "I'm sorry. I know I can't make up for the years of disappointment, but I want you to know that I see you now, and I see what you've accomplished." I wasn't sure what to say. Part of me wanted to reach through the phone and hug him. The other part of me wanted to hold on to the anger that had kept me going all these years. "I've been trying to prove something to you," he said slowly. "But I don't need to any longer. I've built this on my own. I don't need your approval to know I've done something important. But it would have been nice to have you believe in me a little sooner." "I know," he said quietly. "And I'm sorry I wasn't there for you when you needed me most. But I'm here now. I'd like to start over, Rachel. I want to know you. I want to be part of your life, not just as your father, but as someone who truly respects what you've built." His words hung in the air, and for a moment, I didn't know how to respond. I had spent so many years pushing them away, convincing myself that I didn't need their approval. But hearing him say those words, hearing him finally acknowledge the person I had become, it made something inside of me shift. "I don't know if I'm ready for that yet, Dad," I said, my voice thick with emotion. "I still need time. But thank you for seeing me, for finally seeing me." "I understand," he said, his voice sincere. "I'm here when you're ready. I'm not going anywhere." After I hung up, I sat in silence for a long time. I wasn't sure if I was ready to forgive them, or if I ever would be. But hearing my dad say those words, "I see you now," it was the first step toward healing. Not just for me, but for our family. I didn't expect it to be easy, but maybe, just maybe, it was possible. The next day, I sent Sophia a message. It had been weeks since we last spoke, but something in me knew it was time to reach out. I wasn't sure what I was looking for, but I couldn't ignore the need to say something, to acknowledge the space that had grown between us. I think we need to talk, I wrote. I don't know where we go from here, but I don't want things to stay the way they are. I'm not asking for forgiveness, but I think we owe it to ourselves to try. I stared at the message for a long time before hitting send. There was still so much anger, so much hurt, but a small part of me believed that if I didn't at least try, I'd regret it. Hours passed before she replied. I've been thinking about you a lot, Rachel. I've messed up. I know I hurt you and I'm sorry. Let's talk soon. I didn't know what would come of it, but for the first time in a long time, I felt a glimmer of hope. Maybe there was a chance for us to rebuild something real. Maybe we could move past the pain and start fresh. But even as I began to think about healing the wounds with my family, the weight of the business loomed over me. I had created something incredible, but I couldn't ignore the fact that the more successful I became, the more people wanted a piece of it. Investors, partners, competitors, everyone wanted something. It was flattering, yes, but it was also exhausting. I had worked so hard to get here, but now the challenge was to stay true to my vision, to keep pushing forward without losing sight of why I started this in the first place. It wasn't just about success, it was about independence. It was about building something that mattered, not just to me, but to the people who relied on it. That night, I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, thinking about everything that had happened. I wasn't sure what the future held, but one thing was clear: I had come too far to let anyone, even my family, dictate what I could achieve. The journey wasn't over yet. There was still so much to do, and for the first time in a long time, I felt ready for whatever came next. 6 months after the awards ceremony, everything had changed. Client flow was now valued at $115 million, and the business was growing at a pace I had never imagined. We had expanded to a second office in San Francisco, hired more employees, and formed alliances with some of the biggest small business associations in the country. Our sales were stronger than ever, and my name was starting to be recognized in business circles. I was invited to speak at South by Southwest, a prestigious tech conference in Austin, and thousands of people showed up to hear my story. It was overwhelming, but it was the culmination of everything I had worked for. Yet, as much as I had achieved, there was still something I hadn't fully faced. The relationship with my family wasn't where I had hoped it would be. My dad had tried to make amends, and I appreciated that. But the damage wasn't something that could be repaired overnight. And Sophia, well, we hadn't spoken much since I reached out to her. There was an awkward distance between us, something I wasn't sure could ever be bridged. I was at peace with that. For the first time in my life, I wasn't trying to prove anything to anyone. The business was thriving, and I had surrounded myself with people who supported me. James, my CFO, had been a huge part of our success, and Lucas, our head of sales, had turned out to be a perfect fit for our team. I wasn't alone in this anymore, and that was the most comforting feeling. But it wasn't just the business success that brought me peace. It was the realization that I no longer needed my family's approval. I had spent so many years chasing after something that they would never fully give me, and now I understood that I had to create my own definition of success. It wasn't about the money. It wasn't about the recognition. It was about building something I was proud of, something that mattered, and that's exactly what I had done. I had learned the hard way that no matter how hard you try to please people, you can never truly make them see you for who you are until they are ready to. For a long time, I had tried to change myself to fit into their idea of what success looked like. But I had realized that the only person I needed to be true to was myself. And as the months passed, I began to rebuild my relationship with my parents, slowly but surely. We had our awkward moments, our misunderstandings, but there was something different this time. I wasn't trying to prove anything to them anymore. I wasn't seeking their approval. I was simply allowing them to see me as I was, without any filters, without any pretensions. It wasn't easy, but it was necessary. I hadn't heard from Sophia in months. I knew her marriage had fallen apart, and I couldn't help but feel a sense of sadness for her. The pressure she had put on herself to be perfect, to live up to the expectations of her in-laws, had torn her apart. It was painful to watch from the outside, but I knew she had to figure it out on her own. I had my own path to follow now. The last time we spoke, she had sent me a letter. It was long, heartfelt, and full of regret. She apologized for how things had gone between us, for excluding me from her wedding, for not seeing me for who I was. She had written about the pressure she felt, the need to prove herself to others, and how she had pushed me away in the process. I read it over and over, feeling the weight of her words. I hadn't expected an apology, not really. But now that I had it, I wasn't sure what to do with it. Forgiveness wasn't something that happened overnight, and part of me wasn't ready to forgive everything she had done. But I knew I couldn't hold on to the anger forever. A week later, I sent her a reply. It wasn't an easy decision. I knew I had to be honest with her, but I also knew I had to set boundaries. I couldn't let her back into my life without some kind of understanding, some kind of respect for the person I had become. Thank you for your letter. I believe you are truly sorry for what happened, but saying sorry doesn't fix everything. It doesn't restore the trust that was broken. I need time. I'm not ready to forgive everything yet, but I am open to the possibility of rebuilding our relationship. But it has to be different. It has to be based on respect, not guilt. I'm not sure when or how we can get there, but I'm willing to try. I sent the message and then sat there for a long time, wondering if she would ever truly understand. Would she ever realize what she had done? Would she ever truly see me? A few days later, I received a message from her. It wasn't a long one, but it was enough. I understand. Take all the time you need. I love you. For the first time in a long time, I felt like I had taken control of my own life. I had built something that was mine, something I could be proud of, and I had learned the most important lesson of all. I didn't need anyone's approval to be successful. I didn't need anyone's validation to know that I was worthy, and that was the most freeing feeling of all. As for my business, it continued to thrive. With new investments and partnerships, we were poised to take on even bigger challenges. But now, I was ready to face them not just as an entrepreneur, but as a person who had finally learned how to stand on her own. 6 months after the ceremony, I was no longer the person I had been when I walked into that room. I was someone different, stronger, more confident, and more at peace with who I was. I had built something incredible, and no one could take that away from me. The road ahead was still uncertain. There would be challenges, setbacks, and moments of doubt. But I was ready for them. Because for the first time in my life, I knew that I had the strength to handle whatever came my way. I had built this life. It was mine. And nothing, not even my family's doubts or expectations, could take that away from me